Penguin Random House Audio presents The Summer Friend and Memoir. This is the author, Charles Mcgrath. In memory of Christopher Gillespie. Getting started. When I was growing up, my family spent every July or August in a homemade summer house. Little more than a shack, really. But the weeks we spent there seemed special to me back then, enchanted almost, and the spell is not entirely worn off. I still love summer and look forward to it like a kid awaiting the end of school. Summer is when I've had the most fun in my life. Swimming, sailing, golfing, just goofing off. Summer is when I fell in love with the woman I married. And summer is when I was lucky enough to enjoy a long and unusual friendship at a time when I thought I was past making new friends. My friend has been dead for 7 years now, but I still find it hard to think about summer without also thinking about him. It's not as if he left a hole exactly. I still do many of the same things we used to do together. And I no longer actively mourn him. But he's an indelible part of many recollections, and I find it sweetly, if sadly, pleasurable sometimes to play them over in my head. Whenever I try to tell my own summertime story, I find myself telling a story that is partly his. He was called Chip, and so to start with, we shared a name. I've been known as Chip most of my life, except for a brief period in college when I tried to reinvent myself as Charlie. This Chip and I both had 5-year-old sons named Ben, not majorly weird, but a little, and 8-year-old daughters. In most other respects, we couldn't have been more different. He was 5 years older and had grown up near Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire, where his father taught classics and briefly was headmaster. I grew up in a 2-family house in Brighton, one of Boston's working-class neighborhoods. He was a WASP. I was Irish Catholic. He was a Vietnam vet, Coast Guard, with service on the Mekong Delta, who opposed the war but loved the military. I was a draft dodger who hated taking orders from anyone. We met in August 1982 at a square dance of all places. There were square dances every Saturday at the Methodist Church in the little Massachusetts town where, for a couple of summers, my wife, Nancy, and I had been renting a house overlooking a tidal river. We didn't know anyone there. It was just us. Nancy, me, and the kids, enjoying an old-fashioned sort of summer. No TV, no phone calls, our only entertainments, books, the beach, the river, occasional trips to the ice cream place. Somehow, though, we heard about the square dance and gathered that for a lot of people it was the high point of the week. Not me. I thought square dancing was corny. I was also terrible at it, always turning the wrong way, and I have memories of being steered around like a floor lamp by a stern, impatient woman who turned out to be one of Chip's aunts. We went mostly for the sake of the kids, thinking this might be a place for them to make summer friends, and that's what happened, to them and to us. Ben joined a bunch of little boys in khaki shorts and polo shirts, all of them trying not to look too goofily self-conscious. Our daughter Sarah, who loved any kind of dancing, joined a circle of little girls in summer dresses, their hair washed and braided, and quickly learned from them how to allemande and promenade. And Nancy and I met Chip and his wife Gay. They were both, I couldn't help noticing, exceptionally good square dancers. They even knew how to do the black nag, a country dance so insanely complicated it made me dizzy just to watch. We talked for a bit, the four of us. Conversation was friendly enough, the kids, the weather, the upcoming school year, but if anything, only emphasized our differences. We were renters in town. They were year-round, and unlike us, knew practically all the people in the room. They were apparently related to half of them. Then, out of the blue, Gay invited us for supper the next night. She was always doing that, we found out. She was an excellent cook and loved having people around. He seemed shyer, but even so, to welcome the idea. It turned out they lived on the other side of the river from where we were staying, just off the town's main road, in a house almost hidden by tall bushes in front. We missed it on the first pass and had to back up before pulling into the driveway, almost scraping a big post of vine-covered granite on the right. The house was a remodeled cape, gray with dark green shutters, to which Chip had added a lookout tower, pretty much just for the hell of it. The first thing I remember seeing, in the entrance hall, was an upright piano with an enormous model of a whaling ship on top. Though it was summer, we ate indoors at the dining room table, overlooked by a gilt-framed portrait of some 19th century gent with astonishing side whiskers. Bushrod somebody or other, one of Chip's ancestors. We talked some more the way couples do when fishing for clues about each other. Where you're from, where you went to school, what you do for a living. We learned that Chip was an architect and that Gay was a stay-at-home mom who ran a flower business on the side. The flowers all grew out back in a huge garden, along with their own vegetables. She took gardening very seriously, it became clear, and worked hard at it. 10 years younger than Chip, she had dropped out of college to marry him. I remember thinking she seemed almost hippyish, with long hair almost to her waist, and wearing an ankle-length skirt and a peasant blouse. I thought he seemed like a grown-up, certainly more of one than I was. He had sandy hair, a broad forehead, and a wry expression. And once I learned he was of Scottish heritage, something he took immense pride in, I decided he looked a little like portraits of James Boswell, the great Samuel Johnson biographer. For a time they had lived in Seattle, Gay explained, while Chip finished architecture school, and they had even thought of settling there, but they came back east in a psychedelic Volkswagen bus because they wanted to raise a family in the town where they had both spent their summers. They were like a couple in a New England lifestyle magazine, I thought, an advertisement for a new kind of homesteading. A few days later, we had them back. Their 4-month-old Kate arrived in a basket. While Nancy fixed some side dishes in the kitchen, I grilled swordfish on a little hibachi I had set on the wide porch railing of our rented house. It burned a big dent in the wood underneath, and I spent hours later with sandpaper trying to erase the evidence. Chip noticed the mess, I'm pretty sure, but didn't say anything. That was typical of him. He was seldom critical and had a gift for overlooking things when he wanted to. Most of my friends then were people like me, writers or editors or people in book publishing. What I initially liked about Chip was that he was none of those things. One of the reasons we are renting a house in that town and not in the Hamptons, say, or just across the bay on Martha's Vineyard, was that I wanted a break from the hothouse of New York publishing. I loved that there were no writers to meet, no literary cocktail parties to attend. I probably appealed to Chip for the opposite reason. I was somebody he could talk about books with. He was actually less of a reader than he would have had you believe, but he loved the idea of books, loved having them around, and he also liked hearing stories about the people who wrote them. It also turned out that for all our differences, Chip and I had shared a common New England boyhood. Sports, for one thing. Hockey especially, which we had learned to play not in rinks but on frozen ponds. And the Red Sox, of course. Following them was practically a civic religion in New England back then, one that imparted, or so we were taught, the ennobling lessons of failure. We had also watched the same children's TV shows. There weren't many in those days, and they were all pretty dreary, especially one called Small Fry Club, whose host was a creepy ukulele-playing white-haired guy known as Big Brother Bob Emery. I guess neither he nor his producers read much Orwell. Chip astonished me that evening by remembering every word of Big Brother's theme song. The grass is always greener in the other fellow's yard. The little row we have to hoe, oh boy, that's hard. But if we all could wear green glasses now, it wouldn't be so hard to see how green the grass is in our own backyard. He didn't just recite it, he sang the whole thing, something I never would have dared in front of people I barely knew. Still, after those first 2 evenings, I can't say that I knew Chip very well. Nancy and I just agreed that we liked him and Gay and felt lucky to have found a family with a girl almost exactly Sarah's age and a boy Ben's. What really began our friendship, for me anyway, was an afternoon a few days after that swordfish dinner when Sarah had a play date with Allison, Chip and Gay's daughter. Gay dropped Allison off in their Dodge Caravan, but when it was time for her to be picked up, Chip arrived in a sailboat. We had learned by then that his ancestral homestead, the summer place his grandparents had built back at the turn of the 20th century, was right across the water from us. It was high up on a hill, the shore on the other side was much steeper, and almost hidden by trees. From the house we were renting, you could just make out the hint of a roofline. At the foot of the hill was a dock and an anchorage where his extended clan moored their boats. They were all keen sailors, and here came probably the best of them, tacking smartly through a squiggly channel in the marsh. I hadn't known it was possible to get from one side to the other like that. It was low tide, just marsh grass and mudflats, but Chip swooped.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?